Messages from the Senate. Madam Speaker, I hereby announce the passage by the Senate of the following House file, herewith returned as amended by the Senate, in which amendments and concurrence of the House is respectfully requested. House File Number 462, an act relating to transportation. The message is signed Cal R. Ludeman, Secretary of the Senate. Hornstein moves that the House concur in the Senate amendments to House File Number 462 and the bill be repassed as amended by the Senate.
Representative Hornstein, to your motion. I think you need to unmute Representative Hornstein.
We need to recess for what? 5 minutes to reboot it.
Because the audio is bad on the side.
Just to correct the audio. Okay. Members, we're going to take a brief break so they can reset the Zoom. Members, you do not need to hang up and call in again. They're going to reboot something related to the sound system to address the sound issues. So we'll just chill for a few minutes.
Representative Hornstein, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Ready to rock.
Representative Hornstein, on your motion to concur with the Senate amendments to House File 462.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Yes, that is my motion to concur. I wanted to give just a little quick background about this bill and its path towards us today. The House passed the bill, House File 462, 122 to nothing last year on February 14th. The Senate referred it to the Transportation Committee but did not act on it last year and this year. But yesterday, the Senate suspended the rules and took up House File 462 on the floor. Senate floor, amended a DE amendment to replace the original bill with the language of Senate File 3255. That was our transportation policy bill, or is our transportation policy bill. And then they voted it off the floor on a 67 to nothing unanimous vote. And they seek our concurrence, and I move concurrence. And Madam Speaker, I did want to go over a few of these provisions and a little bit about the process for developing the bill. This bill was assembled by a bipartisan and bicameral working group of transportation leadership in both the House and Senate. That included myself, Representative Tabke, Representative Torkelson on the House side, Chairman Newman, Senator Dibble, and Senator Jasinski on the Senate side. So we felt that it was very important to continue our very positive working relationship that we developed during this COVID crisis and set out a few parameters for this bill. We took a look at a lot of legislation that was passed in both bodies, but we felt that we wanted to make sure the legislation was important. It moved the needle forward in terms of making a difference for people in the transportation arena. But we also wanted to stick to some non-controversial items and items that had no fiscal impact. So the bill was heard and passed in the Transportation Committee here in the House on an 18-0 vote on April 30th. And before I get into the specific provisions, I did want to thank our fantastic staff on both sides of the aisle that really, of course, like in so many divisions, really rose to the occasion here during these very difficult and challenging times that we face. And so I want to just name them quickly. We have on the research side, Jennifer Nelson for the DFL, Joe Marble for the GOP. We have our committee administrator, John Howe, and committee legislative assistant, Dan Dodge, did excellent jobs. But what I really want to hold up most importantly are our nonpartisan staff that just repeatedly went above and beyond the call of duty. Andy Lee, our fiscal analyst, and of course he's been very busy with the bonding bill, and Matt Burris, our research analyst. They were incredible and stellar and are deeply appreciated. So to the bill, Section 1, and again, this is an amalgam of different House and Senate files, a few new provisions that came to our attention because of the COVID crisis, but most of the bills have been heard in our committee. Section 1 is from Representative Sundin, House File 3526. It requires a road authority to notify the owner of a private road after their intent to make repairs on that road. Sections 2, 23, and 26 are from House File 3494. That's Representative Anderson's bill. These are provisions that are turnbacks of state highways to counties. This particular section refers to highways in Stearns County and South St. Paul. Section 3 is Representative Liz Lagarde's House File 3687. This is a bill that makes a technical correction to the specialist Noah Pierce Bridge, and that's in Evelyn, Minnesota. Sections 4, 5, and 6 are from Representative Elkins' House File 3845. Requires a temporary vehicle permit to be displayed where license plates are normally displayed instead of the rear window. Section 7 is Representative Cagle's House File 3553, which eliminates the requirement for a driver to provide a physical address when exchanging information after a collision. And this was of particular importance to groups that are working on domestic violence issues. Sections 8, 9, and 10 are from Representative Wolgamott's House File 3476, which allows new and used school buses being sold by a school bus dealer to be operated under an interim inspection certificate. Sections 11 and 30 are Representative Sundin's House File 3624, and it establishes the number of escort vehicles required for over-dimensional loads. And of course, that depends on the road and the type of road and the specific dimensions. Section 12 and 13 are Representative Jordan's House File 4174. That requires the driver of various school buses and school activity vans to possess proof of physical qualifications to operate the vehicle and disclose specified offenses and driving privilege losses while employed by the entity that owns the vehicle. Sections 14 and 15 are Representative Vogel's House File 4523. That allows a person to request an autism spectrum identifier on a driver's license or Minnesota ID card. Sections 16, 17, 18, and 30 are from Representative Tabke's House File 3240, which modifies MnDOT's regulation of specific transportation services and providers who receive state and federal funds. Sections 19 and 21 are Representative Torkelson's House File 3487, provides for regulation of standalone meteorological towers. That was important to our agriculture aviation community. Section 20 is House File 729 from Representative Considine, and want to thank Representative Tabke for also working on this provision. requires the legislative auditor to conduct a salary and benefits survey of various police departments over the next 10 years. The purpose of this is to ascertain proper salary and compensation levels for the state patrol. We heard very compelling testimony that state patrol salaries are not commensurate with others that are recruiting from the same officer pool, and we hope this will result in a better compensation for the state patrol. This is a study, again, from the Office of Legislative Auditor. Section 22 is Representative Torkelson's House File 4319. It modifies Driver and Vehicle Services Oversight Committee membership so that the Blue Ribbon Council on Information Technology is dissolved. If that is dissolved, the chair of that council continues to serve on the committee. Section 24 extends driver's license expiration dates. We did that for a month in the original COVID-19 legislation that we passed here on the House floor. But this actually extends the expiration date for another month, and it will complement the legislation that we passed earlier. Section 25 requires the MnDOT Commissioner, DPS Commissioner, Chair of the Met Council to report to the legislature on their final COVID funds spent. Again, this is important for transparency to really see where the transportation dollars from the federal government were spent here in Minnesota. Section 27 allows the Commissioner of Public Safety to issue a non-compliant license or ID without a new photo or eye exam up until June 30th, 2001. Section 28 requires a school bus driver to use warning lights and stop arm signals to deliver food, schoolwork, and supplies. This provision only applies during the peacetime emergency. We had a number of reports about children going out towards these buses when they were delivering different items, and there's definitely a safety issue here. Finally, Section 29 is Representative Lewick's House File 1739, which allows Aiken County to deposit road and bridge funds and tax collections into a single account for unorganized townships. So that's House File 462. I just also wanted to mention a couple of provisions that are not in here, but are nonetheless important to many members of our committee, and I would also argue the legislature as a whole. In our committee this year, we spent quite a bit of time discussing the urgent issue of transit safety. And a number of proposals emerged, and this was one where I wanted to see if we could reach some bipartisan consensus. And I really want to thank Representatives Tabke and Kosnick for their hard work, because I think we're pretty close to that consensus. And this is a difficult issue: crime, public safety, transit, all wrapped up together. And they did some really good work on this issue. And I think have created a template for future work, hopefully in the next few weeks, to get this across the finish line. It was unfortunately not acceptable to the Senate, and I think there were even others in our working group that were not quite ready to include this in our consensus bill. Also, Representative Bernardi's House File 4097. That was the last bill out of our committee. We passed 33 bills this month. We were very in the first month, February to March. And this was our last bill out of our last in-person meeting on March 12th. And this dealt with the attempting to really address the backlog in driver testing. This was an issue before COVID. It'll be an issue after COVID. We passed it out of our committee, but then again, we had the crisis hit, and a number of things have happened since we passed the bill out of committee. Earlier this week, Department of Public Safety issued a very thorough report about their plan to deal with this issue, and we have some openings now of driver testing stations scheduled for a few weeks from now. It's my intention to hold a interim hearing in our committee in a couple of weeks to dive into this issue with much more depth, entertain ideas from both sides of the aisle so that we can complete the work that was started on this provision. So with that, members, I I ask for your support, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Discussion on the motion to concur with the Senate amendments. Representative Munson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have a question for Representative Brand, if he would yield for a question.
Representative Munson, you have a question for who?
Representative Brand? Sorry? Representative Brand?
I will yield.
Representative Brand, he will yield. Representative Munson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Brand, you're the Vice Chair of Transportation, so I'm assuming you worked on this bill as well. And you're my neighboring legislator. We share a boundary across the Minnesota River. Our districts run side by side and peppered with farm fields. As I've read through this bill, I see on Section 21, Subdivision 1, which is addressing the meteorological towers. It actually doesn't just address meteorological towers, it also addresses any towers with antennas attached to them. And a lot of the farm sites in our districts used to use communication with people in the field in the fall during harvest by CB radio. So a lot of farm sites have towers on their bin site or on their farm site, and also on their grain bin, grain legs. And as I was driving around the district these last few days looking at farm sites, there are a lot of these towers in our district. Of course, CB radio isn't commonly used anymore, and a lot of the towers have TV antennas, or more frequently now, is like my farm site, we mount fixed wireless broadband transponders on these towers so that we can receive high-speed internet efficiently and effectively, and cost-effectively. This bill requires all of these towers to be painted in accordance with aviation guidelines. Now, I've got a 65-foot tower in my backyard, and it sits about 200 feet from a 120-foot high cottonwood tree. I understand safety is important for aviation. Crop dusters aren't prevalent around our area, but you have a flight school in your district. I've spent a lot of time on the phone with them because they have 400 students that can't fly in airplanes because of the shutdown. And I understand safety for flying around farm sites, but these towers don't bear a significant risk to airplanes, especially when the surrounding trees are taller than a lot of these towers. But they do play an important role for fixed wireless and rural broadband. And as an advocate for farm safety, I would be concerned about farmers climbing these towers to paint them red and white in accordance with aviation guidelines. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are on farm safety of having these farmers climb these towers. And quite honestly, these towers are made from heavily galvanized iron or steel, and they're not conducive to be painted. The paint flakes off of these heavily galvanized steel. I don't know how I'm going to paint my tower. I'm certainly not going to pay for a crane to come in and do it for thousands of dollars. And this bill creates a new tax on farmers to have to pay and register their tower with the state. And even if they have an existing one or they erect one, the only way they get out of it is if they tear it down. Many of us would lose our broadband wireless communication because it requires a line of sight. So I'd ask for your opinion on this bill and what you would do to, what you tell the farmers in our districts about this new tax and this on these towers.
Representative Brand.
Madam Speaker and Representative Munson, first to clarify, I'm not Vice Chair of the Transportation Committee. I know that Brad Tabke and I get confused a lot up here, okay. But I'm actually Vice Chair of the Agriculture Committee. I believe that's what you were meaning to say. In reference to the Transportation Committee itself, I don't sit on the committee, so I wasn't privy to those discussions. I would say that there are also people that have CB radio towers in St. Peter, inside the city limits where I live, and I'm not sure exactly what the conversation was and what led them to the discussion of that. I just don't have a good answer for you right now.
Representative Munson.
Representative Brand, I apologize. I thought you were on the Transportation Committee, so I was going to pose the question to you. But as for farm safety, I know that you're working on grain bin safety. Do you have concerns about farmers being required to go up and paint their towers that are over 50 feet? A lot of farmers have ones like mine. It was a common brand that's 65 feet tall. If Representative Brand would continue to yield.
Representative Brand, will you yield?
Yes, Madam Speaker, I will.
He will yield. Representative Munson.
Representative Brand, I was just posing a question about farm safety as it relates. You've been working on some legislation around grain bin safety, and is this a concern of yours that farmers would be climbing these towers to paint them to match the requirements of this bill?
Representative Brand.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Munson, I would say that I myself would be very challenged to climb up on top of a grain bin, given the fact that sometimes I get vertigo when I get up in high spaces. I would say that I myself wouldn't be excited to do that, and I would definitely recommend that anybody that would do that would follow any specific safety criteria that might be offered to them, some advice on safety, including harnesses, specific safety features, including anchor points and that sort of thing. There are people, I'm sure, that can be hired to do that specific job safely as well. I would say it is critical that we make sure and we advocate for the best interests of our farmers. I grew up on a farm, and so I know that sometimes things are cobbled with chewing gum and duct tape and some other items to make things work. And I get it. That's what farmers typically do. They just make things work. And unfortunately, we have situations like that. Sometimes you do run into people losing fingers in corn pickers. Sometimes you do lose individuals for safety reasons and that sort of thing. Also because they just can't afford to buy that harness for their grain bin, or they don't have the technology like we just allocated through the House and Senate in the agriculture finance bill to allow them to have a specific shut-off safety switch. And so, when we talk about any particular industry, no matter what it is really important that we do have some sort of focus on safety. And I think that sometimes people just get in a rush and they forget to be safe when they're doing certain things, including harvest and hauling grain to market and that sort of thing. It's really important and I think vital that people take a moment to think about the safety aspect of it.
Representative Munson.
Thank you, Representative Brand. I too hope that farmers can be safe on the farm. I see this new requirement and this new tax on farmers as being a threat to their safety. It's also a misdemeanor under this new provision if the farmer doesn't comply. And again, driving around rural Minnesota, I haven't been the biggest advocate for in-the-ground fiber optic cable being trenched into every farm site, but I have been an advocate for fixed wireless broadband. And these transponders for fixed wireless broadband are installed at the tops of many of the grain legs around our district, and then would qualify under this bill as being a meteorological tower or that includes an antenna, as well as other provisions that can classify this as a meteorological tower. So I'm concerned that this bill is going to be going against fixed wireless rural broadband. It's causing it's just a large burden of requirements on farmers and putting them in very grave danger having to comply with this rule or face a misdemeanor. So members, I would vote and I would urge a no vote on this concurrence. This bill is not ready. Farmers do not need to be taxed with a new tax at this time or a misdemeanor. So I would urge a no vote. Thank you.
Any further discussion on the motion to concur? Seeing none, all those, Representative Koznick, did you want to be recognized on third reading? All those in favor of the motion to concur, please say aye. Those opposed, please say no. The motion prevails. The clerk will give the bill its third reading as amended by the Senate.
Third reading, House File Number 462, as amended by the Senate.
Third reading as amended by the Senate. Discussion to the bill. Representative Koznick.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and members on the phone. I know it's quite a long day. We're almost done, but I rise to talk about a couple one particular issue, transit safety, talk about a couple issues that are missing in this and some work that is yet to be done. And Chair Hornstein, I appreciate your comments, and I know that we've worked and you continue to work and be available to get transit security passed. Representative Tabke and I have come to a pretty good agreement, and as you mentioned, a good template to work off of. But members, I do want to, it's not just empty talk, and it is a very important issue because I want to highlight that even during the COVID period, the issues on the transit system remain. Is day or night, we've heard of some high-profile attacks, one at 9 in the morning, one at midnight, and all throughout the day, there's still a major threat to our transit system. And I want to speak a little bit to our friends down the hall. I'm very disappointed that we were working with you to try to get some agreement. We were very close, and at the last minute, you backed away from the language that we were working on. And so we've tried to give you some time to deliberate and wrap your thoughts and embrace the language that we have. But better start deliberating a little bit faster. And while Chair Hornstein, I appreciate that you think or are willing to work on this in the next couple days or weeks, I'd like to see something done even in the next couple hours. And so I plead that you'll see the urgency of this issue. And just to highlight a couple of recent issues in the last month, aside from the high-profile issues, it occurs quite frequently. And it's not just, there's a large group in the middle car was partying, continuously smoking and partying. There's even somebody that would try to bring a propane tank onto the train, and I'm not sure what their intent was, but obviously that's a concern. There was a fight in one of the other trains. Another report has screaming and drinking going on in the train, and mace was used to protect somebody. Another incident, a group of people chased a guy walking his dog. There was a passenger that was assaulted, not the higher profile one that we know of, but there was bleeding to his head, and this was on a ride back from the airport. On that same day, I think, there was another female assaulted. A couple days before that, there was a female was being attacked by 4 males. A couple days before that, another assault. A month ago, there was a man that was passed out and then kicked in the face. And so we don't have to wait for a high-profile incident to happen to recognize that this is an ongoing problem. And I appreciate the members in the Senate, members in the House that have worked with us across the aisle, and we have some bipartisan agreement on a bill that I started, and we tweaked the language a little bit to adjust for the budget deficits that we're experiencing. But I list those issues so that our friends down the hall, your constituents are counting on you, and we are here to work with you, and I hope that you will take this matter as serious as we do. A couple other issues, Chair Hornstein, I appreciate your comments on the driver transit scheduling. It was a huge issue and a problem for many parents and students before COVID-19, and we've heard how much more backlogged it is now. And so I hope that we can build off of the discussion that we had, as you mentioned in committee, that simply studying the issue is no longer enough. And so I hope that when we resume here, that we can take up some of the practical ideas and create more of an urgency on this topic so that students can actually, at some point later this summer, get to their summer jobs. The other day we passed a bill to allow 16 and 17-year-olds to do a little bit more work. But if they can't get to their jobs because they can't get their driver's test passed, that bill doesn't do any good. And so I want to end here just to say that the underlying bill is fine, but there's a lot missing, and it's very, very important to our transit system to have a system that people can feel safe in and not be afraid of being the next victim. And so doing nothing is not acceptable, and doing nothing is shameful. So I appreciate the work that we've done in our committee and in this body, and I would like to see if we can push something across the street and have them act on it, because I believe they're ready. They just need to get comfortable with it, and we've given them the time to do that. And so members, if the opportunity arises, Madam Speaker, I would encourage us to try to pass our transit safety language. Thank you, members.
Representative Torkelson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you, Representative Torkelson.
Thank you. Before I get to the bill in general, it's very important that I clear up some confusion regarding meteorological towers. Representative Munson is badly confused on this. He needs to read the bill much more carefully. It has nothing to do with farmers, nothing to do with farmers climbing towers or painting anything. It is strictly aimed at the temporary towers that are put up in advance of a wind installation. These are quite tall, and we've had some trouble in the past with crop dusters. They are the towers that are put up to test the wind to see if there is a good wind resource in a particular area. So the comments of Representative Munson are out of line, inappropriate, and confusing. And I hope if any farmers are listening, I happen to be one of them, I hope farmers understand that this has no effect on their grain legs or their radio towers or their towers that relay internet signals. With that, Madam Speaker, I'll go to the bill itself. The bill itself, the underlying bill, has been carefully worked out. I'd like to thank Chair Hornstein for his fine work on this bill. He's been very collaborative throughout the process. It's gone very well. And the items in the bill have been agreed to by all four caucuses. It's been really a good job by Frank. I'd like to congratulate him and his Vice Chair, Representative Tabke, for the work they've done. And of course, all the staff members that Frank has already thanked to deserve thanks to, and the members of the committee. As has also been related, there's some things missing from this bill that are really important. We've already talked about transit safety. I won't dwell on that. Hopefully we'll be addressing that soon. We have another major issue with troopers. There is a trooper study language in this bill, but that language was in a bill last year and the study never got done. Thankfully this year, they're moving that study from MMB, and the Office of the Legislative Auditor will be doing the study, and I'm sure it will get done, but it's going to take some time. And in the meantime, our troopers are languishing and we are short-staffed. We need to make sure that we attract troopers and attract them in numbers adequate to fill the staff. And to do that, we need to do the Trooper Academy, which also is in need of funding. In addition to that issue, as everyone knows, or most everyone knows, we've been struggling with MNLARs, and we're now trying to work through the implementation of the new computer system. But the result of that computer system is that we are shifting work from the state level down to our deputy registrars. So every transaction they do requires more time, takes more effort on their part, and yet we have done nothing to change the compensation for the work they're doing. And then you layer in the COVID crisis on top of that, the fact that they were shut down for a period of time and that they still can't do much of their face-to-face work. The deputy registrars across the state need our help. We need to figure out how to address this so that they can stay in business and offer our citizens the services that they badly need. Finally, Madam Chair, I will address bonding. I realize it's not part of this bill, but it's a very important part of transportation. And as we work our way towards a bonding bill, either now or later, it's critical that transportation be addressed. If you've been driving around the state, you will notice that there are lots of construction projects going on right now that are funded. But that funding stream is going to start to run short as we see a decrease in gas tax and a decrease in sales tax being collected. And that's going to put the pinch on as we try to do new projects in the future. Bonding can do a lot to alleviate that. So I look forward to a robust transportation section in the bonding bill as it comes to fruition. With that, Madam Speaker, I urge members to vote green on this bill. The committee has worked hard to put together a bill that does some good things for the citizens of Minnesota.
Representative Brand.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wasn't going to speak to this bill. I was blindsided by a colleague on a question about transportation that obviously the homework wasn't done. We're both in neighboring districts, and I just wanted to mention, I wanted to thank Representative Torkelson for authoring that bill. I just actually, there's close to 5,000 bills that we've had authored this year, and things are flying around everywhere right now. But I just wanted to point out that I actually wanted to I signed on to Representative Torkelson's bill because I think it is a very good bill. I would really hate for somebody to crash into one of these towers. And I just wanted to thank Representative Torkelson for turning his bill into a bipartisan bill.
The member from Roseau, Representative Fabian.
Speaker, I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I appreciate the opportunity to address the body. I want to first thank Chair Hornstein for his work and his friendship, and especially Representative Torkelson for his work. I know how hard he works, and I know how much he cares about transportation issues, and quite frankly, all kinds of issues that come before us here in the legislature. And he truly is a hard worker, and I respect both of those guys a whole bunch. I'm speaking today. In December, I had constituents, Bob Tuttle, who is the patrol inspector in charge for the U.S. Border Patrol at the road station, and Sheriff Steve Gust, who is the Roseau County Sheriff. They came to me with a request to have two segments of two different highways memorialized because peace officers had been killed in the line of duty. One of them was Richard K. Magnuson, who was killed in 1978. Somebody ran the border north of Roseau. He went to intercept the car and was shot and killed in that conflict. And then also way back in 1928, Patrol Agent Robert H. Lobdell was killed, again in the line of duty. Stopped a car and was shot and killed. Officer Tuttle is interested in these things largely because he's going to retire at the end of June. And he'd been talking to a number of people in the area, and they thought that they should do something. So they came to me with the idea of getting this done. So we had the bills drafted. And what they want to do is memorialize a section of Highway 11 and a section of Highway 310. There's no fiscal note involved. All of the funds need to be raised locally. That's written right into the bills that we had. I appreciate Chair Lyndon Carlson for actually going to work on this to get it through Ways and Means so that we could get it to the General Register. And we got it there. Had some amendments drafted to try to get this attached to the transportation bill that we're talking about this evening, and that ran into a snag across the street. And This is one of the most bizarre decisions that I've seen in the 10 years that I've been here, to not be able to memorialize some highways because police officers have given their lives in the line of duty. It makes absolutely no sense to me. It's very disappointing to Sheriff Gust and Patrol Agent in Charge Tuttle. Both of them are friends of mine. And it's also disappointing to the men and women that serve and protect us on a daily basis, and especially those in my area. And it's very troubling to not respect the wishes of those people who brought these ideas forward. And Madam Speaker, the irony of this is that per the governor's order, yesterday, flags were ordered to fly at half staff in honor of peace officers who have been killed or injured in the line of duty. I hope that somehow before the end of session, we can get this done to honor the men and women around the state, and in this case here, these two fallen officers. And I look forward to continuing to work with folks to see if we can't do this. I'm disappointed by not having this included in the bill, and sadly, I'm probably going to vote no on the bill to show my constituents that I'm sticking up for them. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Any further discussion? The author of the bill, the member from Hennepin, Representative Hornstein.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker and members, and I appreciated the discussion today. Just a couple of brief concluding comments. First of all, I want to take this opportunity to thank Representative Fabian for bringing forward these bills. And on our House side, we do routinely pass these bills for the reasons that you articulated, Representative Fabian. And I don't know how many more House floor speeches you have in you between now and midnight tomorrow, but I want to take this opportunity to thank you for your service and your friendship. I was moved by the hearing in Ways and Means earlier this week on your bill, so I know it's on the general register, and I'm going to work with you now, or if we go into overtime, to make sure that this happens for you and your constituents. Secondly, just a couple quick comments. I wanted to correct the record a bit on two things that Representative Koznick said. And again, I do appreciate very much his work on transit safety and really his ability to, and Representative Tabke, to meet each other halfway and really come up with, I think, a workable compromise that I hope will be adopted eventually on a strong bipartisan basis in the House. I don't think that we're there yet. There were some amendments to this bill that were introduced on the Republican side prior to Thursday that I think indicated still some division on the other side of the aisle. I think that many of us on our side are very encouraged and supportive of House File 3085, Representative Tabke's bill, which passed transportation and public safety. So not necessarily accurate to point fingers here, but we still want to work together because this is one of these issues where we do need unity on both sides of the aisle. I think is very important to move forward. Representative Koznick also said the Senate is ready on this. That is not my understanding. I know the Senate is interested in transit safety, but they were not ready to accept this. And I really tried as hard as I possibly could to move this even earlier this week to see if we could get it included in this bill, but the Senate is not yet ready, at least on this particular proposal. So we're going to have to work with them here, I think, in the next few weeks. I'm hoping that if there is a special session, this would be one of the items that we address. Finally, Madam Speaker and members, I just on a personal note, as Representative Torkelson said, I found our process here among the transportation leadership on both sides of the aisle and also the House and Senate to be particularly rewarding in this moment of crisis. We worked hard. We built strong relationships with each other. It's really how legislating should be done. Now, I know we're not going to agree on everything, nor should we. We have different worldviews on many issues, but at least for this time in the Transportation Division, we put that aside and came up with this product, which is good. It's going to make a difference in people's lives. And this is really one of these things that I'm going to carry with me for a long time, the collaborative spirit. And I hope that we can continue that into the future. So with that, Madam Speaker, I ask for a green vote on the concurrence on House File 462.
Hearing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on House File 462.
Acom.
Acom, aye.
Acom, aye. Albright.
Albright, aye.
Albright, aye. Anderson.
Anderson, aye.
Anderson, aye. Backer.
Backer, aye.
Backer, aye. Bonner.
Bonner, aye.
Bonner, aye. Barr. Barr, no. Baker. Baker, aye. Becker, Finn.
Becker, Finn, aye.
Becker, Finn, aye. Bennett.
Bennett, aye.
Bennett, aye. Bernardi.
Bernardi, aye.
Bernardi, aye. Bierman.
Bierman, aye.
Bierman, aye. Bow.
Bow, aye.
Bow, aye. Brand.
Brand, aye.
Brand, aye. Cantrell.
Cantrell, aye.
Cantrell, aye. Carlson, A.
Carlson, A, aye.
Carlson, A, aye. Carlson, L.
Carlson, L, aye.
Carlson, L, aye. Christensen.
Christensen, aye.
Christensen, aye. Claflin.
Claflin, aye.
Claflin, aye. Considine. Considine.
Considine, aye.
Considine, aye. Daniels.
Daniels, aye.
Daniels, aye. Doubt. Doubt, aye. Davids. Davids, aye. Daphne.
Daphne, aye.
Daphne, aye. Dean.
Dean, aye.
Dean, aye. Damath. Damath, aye. Detmer.
Detmer, aye.
Detmer, aye. Dreskowski.
Groskowski, no.
Dreskowski, no. Eklund.
Eklund, aye.
Eklund, aye. Edelson.
Edelson, aye.
Edelson, aye. Elkins.
Elkins, aye.
Elkins, aye. Erickson.
Erickson, aye.
Erickson, aye. Fabian.
Fabian, no.
Fabian, no. Fisher.
Fisher, aye.
Fisher, aye. Franzen.
Franson, aye.
Franzen, aye. Freiberg.
Freiberg votes yes.
Freiberg, aye. Garofalo.
Garofalo, aye.
Garofalo, aye. Gomez.
Gomez, aye.
Gomez, aye. Green.
Green, aye.
Green, aye. Grossel.
Grossel, aye.
Grossel, aye. Grunhagen.
Grunhagen, aye.
Grunhagen, aye. Gunther.
Gunther, aye.
Gunther, aye. Haley.
Haley, aye.
Haley, aye. Halverson. Halverson, aye. Hamilton.
Hamilton, aye.
Hamilton, aye. Hanson.
Hanson, aye.
Hanson, aye. Hassan.
Hassan, aye.
Hassan, aye. Hausman.
Hausman, aye.
Hausman, aye. Heinrich.
Heinrich, aye.
Heinrich, aye. Heinzman.
Heinzman, aye.
Heinzman, aye. Herr.
Her, aye.
Herr, aye. Hertas.
Hertas, aye.
Hertas, aye. Hornstein.
Hornstein, aye.
Hornstein, aye. Howard.
Howard, aye.
Howard, aye. Hewitt.
Hewitt, aye.
Hewitt, aye. Johnson. Johnson, aye. Jordan.
Jordan, aye.
Jordan, aye. Jurgens.
Jurgens, aye.
Jurgens, aye. Keel.
Keel, aye.
Keel, aye. Cleavorn.
Cleavorn, aye.
Cleavorn, aye. Cagle.
Cagle, aye.
Cagle, aye. Katiza Wattoon.
Katiza Wattoon, aye.
Katiza Wattoon, aye. Kosnick. Kosnick, aye. Kreshaw.
Kreshaw, aye.
Kreshaw, aye. Kunish Podine.
Kunesh Podine, aye.
Kunish Podine, aye. Lehman.
Lehman, aye.
Lehman, aye. Lee. Lee, aye. Lesh.
Lesh, aye.
Lesh, aye. Liebling.
Liebling, aye.
Liebling, aye. Lean.
Lean, aye.
Lean, aye. Lilly.
Lily, aye.
Lilly, aye. Lippert.
Lippert, aye.
Lippert, aye. Lislegard.
Lislegard, aye.
Lislegard, aye. Long.
Long, aye.
Long, aye. Lucero.
Lucero, yes.
Lucero, aye. Lewick.
Lewick, Aye.
Luick, aye. Mahoney.
Mahoney, aye.
Mahoney, aye. Mann.
Man, I.
Mann, aye. Mariani.
Mariani, aye.
Mariani, aye. Markwart.
Markwart, aye.
Markwart, aye. Mason.
Mason, I.
Mason, aye. McDonald.
McDonald, aye.
McDonald, aye. Mecklin.
Meckland, aye.
Mecklin, aye. Miller.
Miller, aye.
Miller, aye. Moeller.
Moeller, I.
Moeller, aye. Moran.
Moran, I.
Moran, aye. Morrison.
Morrison, I.
Morrison, aye. Munson. Munson. Murphy.
Murphy, I.
Murphy, aye. Nash. Nash, aye. Nelson M.
Nelson M, aye.
Nelson M, aye. Nelson N.
Nelson M, aye.
Nelson N, aye. New. New, aye. Nor.
Nor, aye.
Nor, aye. Nornis.
Nornis, aye.
Nornis, aye. Novotny.
Novotny, aye.
Novotny, aye. O'Driscoll.
O'Driscoll, aye.
O'Driscoll, aye. Olson. Olson, aye. O'Neill.
O'Neill, I.
O'Neill, aye. Pulowski.
Pulowski, aye.
Pulowski, aye. Purcell.
Purcell, aye.
Purcell, aye. Petersburg.
Petersburg, aye.
Petersburg, aye. Pearson.
Pearson, aye.
Pearson, aye. Pinto.
Pinto, aye.
Pinto, aye. Poppy.
Poppy, I.
Poppy, aye. Poston.
Poston, aye.
Poston, aye. Pryor.
Pryor, I.
Pryor, aye. Quam.
Quam, aye.
Quam, aye. Richardson.
Richardson, I.
Richardson, aye. Robbins.
I.
Robbins, aye. Runbeck.
Runbeck, I.
Runbeck, aye. Sandell. Sandell.
Sandell, aye.
Sandell, aye. Sandsted.
Sandsted, I.
Sandsted, aye. Sauk.
Sauk, aye.
Sauk, aye. Schumacher.
Schumacher, aye.
Schumacher, aye. Schultz.
Schultz, I.
Schultz, aye. Scott.
Scott, I.
Scott, aye. Stevenson.
Stevenson, aye.
Stevenson, aye. Sundin.
Sundin, aye.
Sundin, aye. Swazinski.
Swazinski, aye.
Swazinski, aye. Tabke.
Tabke, aye.
Tabke, aye. Tice.
Tice, I.
Tice, aye. Torkelson.
Torkelson, aye.
Torkelson, aye. Erdahl. Erdahl, aye. Vang.
Vang, I.
Vang, aye. Vogel.
Vogel, aye.
Vogel, aye. Wagenius.
Wagenius, I.
Wagenius, aye. Waslowick.
Wozlowick, I.
Waslowick, aye. West.
West, aye.
West, aye. Winkler. Winkler, aye. Walgamot.
Wolgamott, aye.
Walgamot, aye. Zhang Jie.
Sean J, aye.
Zhang Jie, aye. Zhang Ti.
John T, aye.
Zhang Ti, aye. Joachim.
Joachim, I.
Joachim, aye. Speaker Hortman. Speaker Hortman, aye. Munson. Munson. Drazkowski.
Drazkowski changes from no to aye.
Drazkowski changes from no to aye.
There being 131 ayes and 2 nays, the bill is passed as amended by the Senate and its title agreed to.